We just see what happens. But here's a guy that's going to join me now. You hear him on Fox Sports Radio. You have seen him all over X. You have heard us talk about him on X. He's the host of the Morning After Pod, also the QB Read, which I believe is on Substack. Don't hate me, Jared, if I'm wrong, but Jared Smith joins me on the program. Now, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. Yeah, Substack. So I was told by some social media people that I should have a Substack. I don't really do a whole lot of long form writing, so I started that because football is really the only thing I feel like I know enough about to do long form. But yeah, Substack, Patreon, YouTube. I mean, I think that's the best advice I have for anyone out there these days is diversify, because there's just so many platforms out there. You got to figure out a way to get your name out there. But it's great to be here, Mike. I know you guys have been really positive and supportive. So I'm always trying to get back to people who've given to me. So I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate your time, man. We appreciate the content you put out. I know from a personal side with me, when we started this journey here, you were one of the first people that I told the guys, I'm like, go follow him,
That's awesome, man.
And we get it going. So let's get into the basketball side of things to start here. How is your March Madness going? And I know you and I have kind of echoed the same sentiments for the this tournament sucks crowd. How is your March Madness going to this point?
Fantastic. It's changed for me over the years. Like it used to be more bracket heavy, right? Like I used to take a lot of time and try to analyze every team and every upset and try to figure out how to curate the perfect bracket. I used to have multiple brackets. Now over the last few years that I've been more into the betting side, the bracket's kind of taken a back seat. And I'm just trying to figure out how to make good bets. I'm trying to figure out if there's teams that are undervalued coming into the tournament, the teams that are overvalued. I'm trying to stay away from the trendy upset picks. I'm trying to use the market to judge who is maybe going to make a deep run. A great example of this could be, when a lower seeded team is favored or a team that, maybe you don't think of in terms of the seed line, and the seedings are pretty much irrelevant, but the market's saying this team's really good, but the seeding isn't, so like that's kind of where I'll look to these days. But I think it's a fun tournament. It's changed. It's not as upset driven now as it used to be, and that's NIL's contributed to that. But the games are just as exciting. I know we had one day that was kind of a bore, kind of a dud day, but I would argue that those are really good teams playing at their highest level. And then we get to the later rounds and all those teams face each other, and then it all becomes moot. So it's been an awesome tournament. I think this weekend's going to be great. I think next weekend's going to be elite. I think Arizona is the best team that I've watched so far. They seem to have the highest ceiling. I think Michigan and Duke and Illinois are right there, but Arizona seems to be the best team right now from what I can glean.
Yeah, last night, man, just an absolute freaking freight train. And not that any of us are shocked that Arkansas couldn't play any defense, but even like you listen after the game and Calipari's like, they're good. I told my coaches this was a bad matchup. Yeah, it looked every bit as bad of a matchup as you thought it was going to be. You were on Iowa with the point spread against Florida. Yeah. What have you seen from this Iowa team for anybody that's, and you know how it gets at this time of the year, and one of the things that we really tried to do with the show when we started, and we say it all the time, we're not handicappers. We don't do this for a living. We're going to get as many wrong as we're going to get right here. But I know the momentum, and you know how this goes. What do you make of this Iowa team going forward here for the people that are going to jump on who is, quote, your Cinderella, if you can, out of a Big Ten conference team?
Very well coached, long, athletic, much more, much more athletic and explosive than you would expect Iowa to be. When you think Iowa, our brains default to football, punting, kicking, defense. This is a team that does run at a relatively slow tempo, but they are highly efficient. One of the metrics that a lot of the pros like to look at when they try to judge offensive efficiency is your EFG percentage, which is something that can be found on KenPom. Essentially, it's saying how effective of a field goal shooting team are you, both twos and threes. Well, they're a top 20 team in the country in that category. And they're also top 50 in average height. So that's why they were a bad matchup for Florida, who is not as guard heavy, much more big focused. And they matched up really well with Florida. Frankly, I thought they got a little fortunate last night. Nebraska went very cold in the second half. Nebraska started out super hot in that game. and then just fell apart in the second half. Fred Hoiberg had a brain fart and only had 4 guys on the floor. Like that game could have gone either way last night. It just bounced Iowa's way. But take nothing away from Iowa. They deserve to be here. But I'll be honest, they're legit. I think Illinois is the Final Four team in that region. I didn't see the line open 7.5. So they played a pretty tight game in Iowa City back in January. And it was a game that I think this Illinois team has grown up a lot, right? They're a relatively young Illinois team with a lot of bigs and a lot of overseas players. So a team like that compared to where they were in mid-January compared to where they are in basically April is very different. So I think this Illinois team has improved dramatically over the course of the last 2 months. And you saw it last night against Houston. And I think Illinois wins that game. Do they cover? Maybe. But I think Illinois is probably the Final Four team in that region.
Let's look at tonight here real quick, and you don't have to give me picks here. I'm not asking for that. But like when you look at the makeout of tonight, to me, the one I see, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier, that has a potential to be a blowout game to me is Iowa State and Tennessee, because Tennessee's inability to handle pressure this year has been kind of an Achilles heel, and I don't think people are giving Iowa State the credit for the pressure that they bring to the table. Is there something that really jumps out of the 4 games other than the East Regional and DC is ridiculously good tonight?
I mean, honestly, all the teams left, all 16 teams that were left in the field, Mike, are all good in their own way. They all bring something different to the table. And then now that we get to this round, it's all about matchups. And you said it, Tennessee struggles to hold on to the ball. They're outside the top 200 in turnover percentage. They don't shoot free throws well. So those are little things that you have to do well against Iowa State. Now, Iowa State is a team that, for the most part, doesn't foul a ton, but they are a team that is a little bit banged up. We'll see how Jefferson looks tonight. I think that's going to be key, but I think they're good without him, frankly. This Iowa State team, I think they're going to the Final Four. I really do. I think the matchup against Michigan in the next game is really tough. And I think Michigan, if you ask me if there's going to be one blowout tonight that I bank on, I think it's Michigan over Bama. I think the 3-point variance is just really tough to predict. If I knew if the 3-point shots were going to fall, I would be on an island in Tahiti somewhere, retired already at age 40. But this is a Michigan team that they just have the ability to bludgeon you inside. And Alabama has not fared well against teams that can shoot it well from inside the arc. It's something that it's a bugaboo for them. And they were scorching hot from 3 against Texas Tech. They shot 45% in that game. We saw this last year in the Sweet 16. They couldn't miss against BYU, shot almost 50%. 2 days later against Duke, shot 25%, lost by 20. So the 3-point variance with Bama is really tough to predict. But unless they're shooting it at 45%, I think Michigan's going to score a lot of points tonight. And now we've seen that number stretch out to 9.5. Like I bet Bama early at 10.5, and I got back in at Michigan at 8.5. So I'd love it if the game landed 9 or 10, but I put more on the Michigan bet because I do think Michigan is the right side of this game tonight.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. A little bit more time here with Jared Smith. You've heard him on Fox Sports Radio, the QB Read, the Morning After Pod, all over X. You've heard us talk about him plenty of times on the show. Happy to have him here today. You know, one of the things that I got, and I know I got this from you back in the day, in just something I heard from you a little while ago, and I was trying to explain this to some of my friends. So you mentioned Iowa State, and I do agree with you. I like them going to the Final Four out of that spot. And I think what happens a lot, and this is really what we're trying to do on the show, is teach people that are new to betting different ways to look at things. I grabbed Iowa State on, I can't even tell the day now. It was 5 days ago to reach, to win the Midwest region at plus 290. Now, nice. Assuming that we know that Michigan and Iowa State are going to match up in that game, it's highly unlikely that Iowa State is going to be, I think, a plus 290 in that matchup against Michigan, because I think they're two very good teams. How do you take strategy later in the tournament and stuff like that to try and find yourself an extra edge? And I think that's the biggest thing that I know when I was a new bettor, that like there's always an extra edge. You got to do a little homework for it.
Risk tolerance. It's all what your risk tolerance is. I've built up a bankroll at, doing this for a few years now, where I don't feel as inclined to protect my wagers as much. Whereas early on, when I'd have a bigger bet on something, I would want to come back and take a little bit off the top, because I don't want to lose the bigger bet, especially if I have a chance to middle, which is really what you want to do. And the pros love doing that. In fact, a lot of the pros will intentionally, for example, a common misconception is that the public moves the line. Like, oh, the public is betting this, so that means the line's going to move. That's not true most of the time. There are exceptions. With a game like, tonight, a Sweet 16 game that, the public isn't overly in hammering. Like, if it's not like a Super Bowl or a national championship, for the most part, the public doesn't move the line. So a game like tonight, let's say the Sharps really like Iowa State at 3. Well, the line's sitting 3.5 right now. So a big whale bettor who's known sharp and who has the respect of the sports books here in town, especially, and there's really only a handful of sports books that really originate lines. One of them, Circa, Westgate. There's a couple of offshore books that originate lines. They will intentionally bet the other side, knowing that the sports book will move off of their action. So let's say that the line at Circa is Iowa State minus 3.5, but the Sharps really like Iowa State at 3. So they'll make a small bet on Tennessee plus 3.5. The book will move to Iowa State 3, and then the bigger bet will come in on Iowa State, and then you'll see it move back to 3.5 or 4. That is a very common strategy that Sharps will implement. So line movement, reverse line movement, all this stuff, like, it could be weird to kind of, use that as a gauge for what the sharp side is. But each personal bettor has to make an assessment of what their risk tolerance is. So if you have a massive bet on Iowa State plus 290, 2, 3, 4 times your usual stake, you're like, I love this Iowa State team, and that's a great number. I'm going to bet plus 290. Then we get to the Elite Eight, and you're 1 win away. And Iowa State, let's say they're a 3-point dog. I don't know. Michigan's maybe like a minus 150, minus 160, minus 170 money line against Iowa State. You have to make that assessment yourself. How much am I willing to lose on this? If the question is, it's not a big bet, I'm willing to lose it all, you probably should just let it ride. If it's not life-changing money, typically I just let it ride. If it's a massive wager that is, relatively life-changing money, then I will come back on the other side and protect myself a little bit. So that's a long-winded way of saying that it's all about your personal risk management and risk tolerance. And that's usually how I approach those situations.
All right. I got to do it just because this was one of my favorite things, and this was all spearheaded by you last year, and how I really fell in love with this market. It's a new baseball season. Everybody's excited to bet a new baseball season. And, one of my guys on the show, Vegas Mac, he hasn't got me into it because the bet drives me freaking crazy because there's too much on the fly math, but it's pitcher outs during games. Not a big fan of that.
I like that one.
Yeah, he likes to bust my chops on it. But you have earned the nickname of the father of first innings. How do you attack betting baseball season, and tell the people that don't know, who haven't listened to me enough to follow you, where that nickname came from?
Dustin Sweetelson from VSiN. Congrats on his engagement, by the way. He just got engaged. Great dude.
Nice.
One of the good guys in the space. I recommend reaching out to him to have him on too. I'm sure he would oblige. It's kind of funny because I don't really consider myself like a baseball sharp. I played baseball growing up. I love betting it. I probably have been betting baseball longer than any other sport. It was the first sport that I bet. And I do think there are edges in baseball. I don't think the Nerfy is an edge. What the Nerfy is, right, the no-run first inning, that's where the nickname came from. It came from this obsession that the public had with this wager. And the reason why the public has an obsession with this wager is because it's quick. It's you're in, you're out. It's a short, right? We live in a very short attention span society. It's a 15, 20-minute bet. It's exciting. It's one run. And the public perception is, oh, it's only 6 outs. Like, it should be, the Nerfy should hit most of the time. When in reality, the first inning is actually the highest scoring inning on average in baseball historically. So there's this like weird sharp square dichotomy to it. And a few years ago, when it was really starting to become popular, like nobody really bet the Nerfy in 2019 or 2020, like right around that time when gambling became legalized and people were looking for ways to bet baseball that was not sit around and watch a 9-inning slog fest. This was before pitch clock, before the game got quicker. The Nerfy was like all the rage. And what I was learning when I was first starting out doing gambling content was there wasn't a lot of information available about it. It was just, oh, this looks like a good bet. 2 good pitchers. Let's bet the Nerfy. So what I did was I started tracking it on a daily basis. And I spent hours and hours and hours every day tracking the pitchers, tracking the offenses, seeing which teams were good first inning teams, which teams were bad first inning teams, which pitchers were good, which pitchers were bad. And I would put out charts and spreadsheets about this. And that is what earned me the nickname, the father of first innings. Now that there are other, like, for example, there's this really great website, and I've partnered with them, I've collabed with them before, that does all this automatically, all this data. I don't do as much research on this market as much anymore. I do like betting it. It's fun. I like the first 5 wagers personally, and totals. I think baseball totals are a good way to approach the market. You have to handicap the bullpens when you're doing full games, but the first 5s, you're handicapping the starting pitchers and the offenses, and props. I think baseball props, pitcher props especially, I think those are my favorite ways to bet baseball. So there's definitely a market for the Nerfy. It's a maddening wager. I like to post about it. I've earned a nickname about it. It's not something that I do. Like, I don't risk a lot of money on it, but it is definitely fun. And I appreciate all of the attention and support that I've received for it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. You kind of led me to my last one here for you. The state of gambling as a whole right now. And you've been one of the more outspoken people about this. And you know, you've known me through the social channels long enough. I'm not going to just blow smoke here, but the perception of how sports gambling is in its space now, and the people that are trying to use it as their pulpits to just smear stuff. You've seen this literally evolve and grow and continue to grow, and now we have prediction markets and all that nonsense in. Where are you at on the state of sports gambling as a whole right now? Because I think this is the thing that especially our new bettors that follow us really need to hear more than anything.
It's a good question. I think there's 2 ways to approach it. I think if you are a non-gambler and you are trying to figure out what this is all about, I think it's a tough time for you. I do. If you're like, for example, if you're a sports fan, you've been a sports fan for years, everyone's talking about gambling and you're like, I want to give it a try. I want to, do some research and get some information about how I can maybe start gambling. I think it's really challenging to cipher through the noise, and you're being led down roads like SGPs and prediction markets and things that are more complicated and more complex, and you're not going to win. And I think that's where the average Joe sports fan who's trying to get involved in gambling is probably up against it. I think for people who have been betting for a really long time and now it's mainstream and you're kind of adapting to this new mainstream world, I think it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you're hearing things from mainstream media that are just not true. Like, it's just bullshit. Like, if I can curse on your show.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's pure bullshit. Gambling is not the problem. The act of gambling is not the problem. Just like the act of drinking is not what leads to deaths from alcohol poisoning or drinking and driving. It's the decision-making and how it's framed. That's the problem. There will be bad actors in every space, no matter what space it is. Everything could be used as an addiction these days. Sugar, alcohol, drugs, tobacco, gambling, everything's an addiction. Your phone. How it's presented to the audience is the problem. And the self-control, the discipline that the people using it have or don't have. Those are the 2 biggest problems that I think a lot of people who, for example, me, I used to have a gamble. I used to be a degenerate, like really degenerate. I used to steal my mom's credit card when I was young, stupid. Now that I've worked in the space for a long time, and I've also changed other aspects of my life, my diet, my fitness, I've become more of a disciplined individual with my lifestyle. I don't abuse it. So when I turn on the TV and see Fox News doing a story about some 20-year-old kid that, ran down the same dark path that I ran down, I get frustrated because the message is wrong. The message should be, here's what not to do. Here is how you can avoid this. The message shouldn't be, look how bad gambling is. Look at this person. He ran his life amok. You could say that about anything. Like, you could find any addiction and you could find the bad actor, the worst of the worst, put them in the spotlight and say, look how bad and terrible this is. But that's the wrong way to frame it to your audience. If you are trying to help the problem, the right way to frame it to the audience is, here is what you shouldn't do. Here is someone who is doing it in a positive way. Follow what they're doing instead of bringing on the negative stories and just spinning it in the negative way. So we are very susceptible to what we see in the media today, and how it is presented to the audience is vital. And that's why I feel like my job is important, why people like you having podcasts like these that preach positive, responsible gambling is important, because there's so much noise and there's so much negativity out there. It needs to be framed in a better way.
For those of you that have watched the show long enough, you know now why I've spoken about Jared, and we've spoken about Jared as we have. Man, that was a long time coming. Tell everybody where they can find you, where else they can find you, what else they can get into. Go ahead and pimp your stuff, man. That's what we do on this program.
I appreciate it, bud. Really, the best place to find me is at Jared Smith Bets. I put the handle there at the bottom. On X, Instagram too. That's usually I'm a little more personal, a little more, my personal journey, a little bit more on Instagram than I don't post a ton of gambling stuff or a ton of work stuff on Instagram. I do have a picks platform, $20 a month on Patreon. I post a lot of charts and graphs and, a lot of other non-gambling stuff on there too sometimes, but that's where, if you want to follow what I'm betting on every single day, that is where I post all of that content. And then the podcast, that's really been my passion project recently. That's where I go on a lot of rants, like I just went with you right now, and you can subscribe to it on YouTube, and I would appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Usually I record once, maybe twice a week, depending on what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, I'm gonna get out with you on this one. So to everybody that's with us, we appreciate you. We appreciate guys in this space like Jared especially. We'll be back with you on Tuesday. By now you know the drill. Happy basketball weekend and baseball weekend, and just enjoy the damn thing. There's too many things going on to not enjoy them. You know the drill by now. For everybody behind the scenes, I'm Mike.